Hey, Professor Breckeisen here, and in this yo-yo, we are going to start to look at how you are going to actually fund your project now that you've found your business model and your actual niche and target audience. So for this lecture, we're going to look at funding models. The next lecture, we'll go over the crowdfunding process, which is kind of like a crash course in how to set up a Kickstarter or a GoFundMe account or something similar like that. So what you've done so far is you've defined a niche, you've identified your target audience, you've done your research, and you selected your business model and conducted your startup budget that you're going to be working with in order to get your project kind of launched and going. But from there, you're going to have to continue to fund your project, especially if it's an ongoing project. So that's what we're going to talk about now, how we're going to actually start to make those funds. So we're going to do that by looking at these different models. Now, these are not the only models that you can use. They're just a handful of them that you can look at. Ones that are probably going to be most likely for projects in this class. You are free to add another funding style if you find one. You can use more than one if you would, if that would work, and oftentimes that does. But we're going to go through these and kind of go through them just in alphabetical order. So it's not like there's any preference here. It's just what works best for your project or what you feel most comfortable with. So the first thing we'll start with are angel investors. These are your kind of like the people that are right there that just hand you the money. The one or several people that are like, I believe in what you're doing, I love what you're doing, and they hand you that money, which sometimes can feel like a dream come true. It can be kind of difficult, but those people do exist. I have personal stories about working with angel investors in the past, and you'll be surprised at how many people want to be as helpful as possible, especially if it's a cause that they believe in. So you're going to be looking for those people that are going to be working with that. There's some pros and cons to these individuals being part of your funding. The pros are you can have access to the capital that you need, the money that you need, and also mentorship, especially if they're kind of involved in the process. If they're connected with the industry, they can probably get you a lot of connections through the industry as well. And because you're working with one or maybe two people or a couple of people, as opposed to a venture capitalist kind of a model, which we'll talk about in a little while, you can get some decisions or come to some conclusions of things a little bit quicker. Some of the cons are you will have some loss of control potentially with your project. It's not uncommon that an angel investor says, I'm going to invest in this, but I have some say in what's going to happen with the project. You might also have a very limited investment network with that person because it's the only funding you have, or a couple of people that you have funding. That well might run out soon, or there might be other limitations where you're not allowed to go get other money because it's going to infringe on the investment that those angel investors are giving you. And they are not looking to, usually they're not looking to do something that's going to take a substantial amount of time to have a return on their investment. They do want to have that coming back in. So an example here, a student with a social media app that they think is going to revolutionize things. They pitch this to their investor, angel investor network. Out of that, an angel investor provides them with significant investment, but they want to have some of that equity involved, allowing them to hire developers and being able to build the platform that they need. So in order to secure this funding, the student had to develop a business plan. That's kind of what you're doing, and put together what we call a pitch deck, which is basically your presentation in this class. And they researched their investor networks, and they reached out to those potential investors. They knew what philanthropists or organizations or individuals who might want to invest in that project. They pitched the project, emphasizing the unique value proposition. We're going to talk about that in later classes, and growth potential. And they negotiated terms, secured investment, and formalized their equity agreement so that they can receive those funds and move forward. The next way of kind of funding yourself is through bootstrapping. And this is probably one of the most common ways that projects will be funded. So what you're going to do with bootstrapping is whatever funds that you make from your project, you're going to reinvest those into your project. So let's say your first month of your project, you're actually able to connect with people and you've made a couple of $1,000s. Well, those couple of $1,000s might not go towards your car payment or your rent just yet. That might be stuff that you're reinvesting back into the company as a loss so that you can continue to grow. Maybe now you can buy a new piece of gear, new some more equipment, or maybe hire somebody or get the insurance that you need, etc. So you'll start to kind of roll that money back into the project. This is great for small scale projects, and especially ones that have a little bit more patience with people that are trying to help you, because that bootstrapping sometimes is a slower process. Pros and cons is, if you're bootstrapping your own project, then you have more control, if not full control over your project. You're not going to have a whole lot of debt because you're just building into yourself, maybe no debt. And you can have opportunity to reinvest profits into yourself as you kind of move forward, which will help to build your business. The difficulties with this sometimes is that it takes a long time, and so your resources will be limited. And if you don't have another income source, you might not have a personal finance strain of money so that you can pay for your living expenses. So this is a lot of times on the side of having a regular 9 to 5 or some other kind of income source until this project takes over that, meaning this project is now paying you so that that other job that you have can be done away with. And it's a little bit slower in the long run. So an example here is a college student wanting to do a podcast on a niche science topics, decide to use their personal savings to buy their equipment and marketing expenses. They rely on the revenue generated through the marketing, through the podcast. So whatever platform they're on, YouTube or Spotify or whatever little bit is coming in as far as revenue, they start to now build into their own project, and that kind of snowballs over time. So in order to do this, if you want to incorporate bootstrapping, you want to evaluate your costs, right? Like anything else, and then start to use your personal savings, part-time job, or whatever it is that you're bringing in until you start getting those resources back in from your product, and then you're going to put those back into the project, and you want to keep continuing to focus on how you're going to generate that income or generate that money, those funds, so that you can snowball that a little bit faster. A lot of times bootstrapping is going to be combined with a lot of other things, so this is probably one many of you will use in your project. Next one is business loans or lines of credit. Very self-explanatory. I'm pretty sure a lot of you will know what this is. You go to a bank, you say, here's my idea, and they say, okay, we will give you the money with the stipulation that eventually that you'll pay that money back, but with interest. So you are going to have to spend money to make money, or borrow money in this case, to go along with that. This is where a lot of businesses kind of fail. Again, we talk about, I brought this up a lot in class, that you don't want to just have the trust me broisms, right? You don't want to walk into a bank and say, I've got this great idea, just trust me, it's going to be amazing. You have to have your pitch together. You have to show that you've done your research. You have a target audience, that you know that it's going to make money. You've got to demonstrate to the bank that you have a way to be able to pay that back so that you don't default or maybe go bankrupt on that loan that you're going to be receiving. So please continue to incorporate what you have in this class if you want to go forward and you want to have debt. There are pros and cons to this. Again, you can have a lot of capital. Banks, if they love, especially if they really love what you're doing and you have a good credit score and you got a good history of paying back your debts, they might be willing to really give you a substantial amount of money. They don't have a say. They're just like, here's the money, you do the thing. We just care that you get the interest back to us. That's what we care about. So they're not going to have a whole lot of decision-making power inside of your project. Most of the time, not any. And you can also receive tax benefits for borrowing the money or how you spend the money, so that you can kind of let the money work for you in more than one way. The cons are the interest payments and collateral requirements sometimes can be very substantial, especially in the long run. A collateral requirement is we'll loan you this money, but you have to like put your house mortgage up on it, so that if you default, then the bank doesn't just lose their money, but they get your house. And so that's kind of scary, or anything else that's smaller than that. So just be very, very careful when it comes to debt. Again, risk of debt burden. You have to calculate that into your life. If your payments on your loan for your business are $150 a month, that might not be stretching you too much. But if you're getting millions of dollars and now you have to pay back tens of thousands of dollars a month, that's going to take some, careful planning and execution on your part of what you're trying to do with your project. And a lot of early stage startups might not have this option. Like when you just come in fresh and you don't have anything, oftentimes it's going to be we've already been running for a year and a half, 2 years, 3 years. Here's where our growth has been. This is what we need to take ourselves to the next level. Here's the research that we've conducted, so that the bank has some kind of confidence in what you're doing. So if you're a student that wants to do this, like this student here in this example, video game studio securing a business loan from a bank so they can make a game. The loan covers development costs, marketing, distribution. The studio repays the loan from the game salary, or the game sales that they get from selling their game. So in order to do this, they had to create a detailed business plan, kind of what you're doing in this class. They approached different banks or financial institutions, paying attention to interest rates, paying attention to other fees. Not all banks are equal, not all fees are equal, not all interest rates are equal, so be smart about it. They submitted an application, got the documentation that they needed to be able to close on that loan. They reviewed and negotiated terms. It can be like, I need this loan for 12 months, 24 months, 72 months, whatever it is, so that you can negotiate and use the loan to cover the project up wherever they needed to do according to the terms that they're working on. So that's the business loan. Just a little personal thing. I just feel like I would be irresponsible if I wouldn't just to say this as another human being in your life. Please be careful with debt. You can get yourself in a whole lot of trouble. So be wise about it and consult some financial help if it's something that you're looking to do and you're nervous about the repercussions of owing that money back, especially on risky businesses. One really popular way of working with projects, and they've been historically very popular, but also historically very challenging to work with if you don't do it right. There is if I just put a Kickstarter out there, I'm going to make a whole lot of money. That is not true at all. You have to go through a rigorous campaign. We're going to talk about it in the next class. Hopefully you'll get some good understanding of how to do this a little bit better. But raising funds from a large number of individuals that we call backers who believe in your project, which is a little bit different than venture capitalists, which we're going to talk about in a little while, and the angel investors. Angel investors are going to be like one or two that are like, here's the bulk of the money. We're talking about now individuals that are paying or offering maybe small amounts of money, but in large quantities of backers. So 10, 20,000 backers giving you $100 each is going to substantially pay for your project and things like that. These are great for projects with strong online presence, which is what we're going to talk about in the next class, and how to do that and how to activate your audience. Pros and cons are you'll have an access to diverse funds. World Wide Web is just that, it's worldwide. You'll receive market validation and audience engagement, because you're going to be working with your audience, and sometimes this is in the development phase as well, and that's a good place for you to start soliciting feedback from your audience. They'll give you, you might come up with an update about what you're doing, and they'll give you some feedback about how they feel about it, especially if you're asking for that, and that'll help you tailor your experiences and your projects to your audience, which is nice. Very minimal equity or debt commitment to this. Usually it's just money that's given to you, so there's really no debt, and you're not really asking people to have a say in your project other than voting with their dollars. But once they have that money put in, or maybe higher tiers, you can have a little bit of say. Somebody can have some say in what you're doing, but we'll talk more about that. Cons: very high competition for attention. Nobody's out there just looking for crowdfunding. Well, that's not true. I'm sure somebody's out there looking, but most people aren't just like browsing through, like, where should I give my money to? Usually they get kind of clued on to something that's happening and they're activated to be able to help. So it's kind of hard to get recognized. Oftentimes you'll have some fees that are associated with the platform. Different platforms will take a percentage or a little bit off the top or a one-time fee. A lot of really successful crowdfunding operations will use a campaign manager. So there are companies that are out there that might have been sitting in our class and said, you know what, there's a lot of people trying to do crowdfunding and I want to do it right for them. I'm going to create the videos. I'm going to create the copy. I'm going to create the whole thing for them. So that might charge you $5,000 to launch your project. But once you make $30,000 and you pocket $25,000, that's nice, right? You pay them their $5,000 and you're ready to go. And you have risk of unmet funding goals. Sometimes these can be a substantial amount of time. Usually the crowdfunding window is like a month or two, but the planning and the ramp up before that could take up to a year. So if it doesn't work out, that could be a little over a year of time lost. So an example here, a video game developer looking to launch a Kickstarter campaign. They offer backers exclusive in-game items and early access and rewards, and the campaign successfully raises the funds to develop the game. So how did they do it? First, they developed a compelling campaign pitch with clear project descriptions and rewards. This can take a lot of time. You have to build this. You got to build graphics. You got to do videos, prototypes, and things like that. They chose a crowdfunding and kind of a site, which one they're going to work with, and created a campaign page. So they set realistic funding goals and launch a campaign, and that's a really important one, that you want to do a realistic goal. And then once that campaign is going, they've got to stay on top of marketing and social media of their campaign. You can't just like build it and say, oh, it's on the internet, let me just relax now and have a good time. It's constant work to make sure that you're driving your audience to your campaign page, and provided regular updates to their backers, kept them engaged, maybe asked them for, kind of like that next step, kind of like a click funnel. I know you've given $5, but here's an incentive to do $20 with a signed copy of a DVD or something like that. Excuse me. Some of your projects might be eligible for grants or scholarships. Typically, these aren't going to be everybody's project, especially if they're specifically for profit. But if they do have some kind of academic or research or nonprofit philanthropic use, a lot of times you'll find that grants and scholarships can help to pay for some of these costs. These are non-repayable funds, so it means you don't actually owe anybody any money after that. These are usually tax money or some other generated money that comes straight to you. You get to use and don't have to give it back to anybody. Again, educational nonprofits and things like that are going to be very popular candidates to have a grant or scholarship. The pros and cons. Pros are you're going to have no debt and usually no equity obligations. So as long as you met the requirement from the grant or the scholarship committee and you fulfilled those things, they're not going to tell you how to do your project for the most part. This can help you to receive recognition and credibility. You can actually put that on your project and say the recipient of XYZ award or grant. This shows that there's some excitement and buy-in at a kind of a higher level. And again, focusing on social and impact or research, this will help you kind of get into those communities. So whatever governing body of that grant or scholarship is a part of, oftentimes that will kind of like become a new audience for you or a new partnership for you, and now a new built-in audience or collaborators can kind of come into the picture. Cons are they're highly competitive. Sometimes thousands of people will apply for the same grants. The projects are oftentimes in order to receive a grant, you have to be very specific. They're looking for like down to the letter kind of things. So if your project doesn't perfectly match, you might not be the ideal candidate. And there are oftentimes limited funding amounts, maybe 1 award or 5 awards. So you don't always have, thousands of projects are not being kind of worked on at the same time. Let me take a drink real quick. Coca-Cola. Product placement for my funding there. Actually, I'm not getting paid by them, but that would be a great example to go back to our previous lecture from last time. So here's an example. Aspiring filmmaker seeks out grants for local arts organizations, applies the grant to fund the production of a documentary about a community art project. The grant covered equipment, salaries, post-production costs, etc. And in order to get this, they researched available grants and scholarships in the film industry, and there's a billion places to go for that. So many I can't just name them here, and I don't even know all of them because it's specific a lot of times to a lot of things. So Google's kind of your best friend. Prepared a compelling project proposal and application, submitted that application with detailed budget and project plan, and awaited grant approval and adhered to any reporting requirements after the fact. So that is another option. For those of you who are doing marketed, or not marketed, but manufactured projects, something that's actually something that you're going to either distribute physically or perhaps even digitally, like a digital download of a film or a video game, you can do pre-sales. Pre-sales means you should have the idea of who you're going to sell the product to, and they buy the product before it is out. Pre-sales are also kind of lumped in with the crowdfunding. A lot of times they kind of work together, but you don't have to do crowdfunding to do pre-sales. And these are really better choices for projects that are like pinpoint specific, like the customer knows exactly what they're going to get. So if you're doing a game or a movie, these are very common tactics to be able to get your funds up and running. Pros are you got your immediate revenue generation. You haven't even started to deliver a product yet, but you're getting revenue coming in. You start to see validation for market demand, especially if it's like high validation, and then all of a sudden that kind of goes viral. The FOMO kind of picks up in your audience. All of a sudden everybody's buying this pre-sale. It's like, I don't want to be the one that's missing out on it. And you have a reduced financial risk because you're getting that money in early. You don't have to go and take a loan or find angel investors, but you have to still deliver. Cons are pressure, you have to deliver. So there's going to be pressure to deliver on those promises. The last thing that any of your pre-sale people want to see are dates being pushed back. At the time of this recording, I've been waiting for this video game called Skull and Bones. I think that's what it's called. It's kind of the Assassin's Creed Black Flag kind of spin-off of just the pirate thing. And we've been waiting for that game for like 2 years now. It keeps getting pushed back and back and back and back. And at the point now, I'm just like, okay, it's coming out in a couple of days. I don't even care anymore because they kind of made me mad. Actually, I'm probably still going to get it. But you got to be careful because you might lose some of your audience that way. Potential for delays or quality issues because of the demands. You have these demands that you promise you're going to deliver. And if not everything goes according to plan, you might have to cut corners unless you don't deliver on time. And not everyone's involved in pre-sales. Not everybody believes in buying things before they can get it. So you might have limited funding compared to other methods this way. So it's a good one to use if it helps or if it works out perfectly. An example might be independent feature filmmaker creates a teaser trailer for an upcoming movie and opens pre-sales for digital copies on their website. The people that are mostly enthusiastic about this film can pre-purchase the film, providing the filmmaker with funds to complete post-production. So in order to do this, you've got to provide some kind of hook to make this happen. So in this case, this organization or these students would have created a teaser and use that content, or maybe if they didn't even have the content, they had to like create fresh content because they haven't even started filming yet. You never know, but something to generate interest in the project. They had to set up a pre-sales page or an e-commerce platform on a website. So if you don't have a website, you got to do that. If you do have a website, now you got to add that to it. And they offered exclusive incentives or early access to entice customers to pre-purchase the product. That can be anything from signed copies to a Zoom town hall with the director to, whatever it is that you can, not only are you getting it early, but you're getting a bonus of it that people who are going to wait don't get. So they want to have like the cool thing that comes with it. And then they promoted pre-sales through the social media marketing, email marketing, and online communities that they've established. Another really easy one is self-financing. That's just pulling the money out of the bank. If you have your own network or family or friends or your own savings, or you want to sell, like maybe you got like some gear or something that you're not using and you want to sell it to fund your project, this is what self-financing is all about. It's perfect for like early stages so that you can kind of get things established, and all of a sudden people get interested, and that's when your angel investors, venture capitalists, maybe bank loans, things like that can start to kick in. So it's a good way to kind of kickstart what you're trying to do. Pros and cons are flexible terms and informal agreements, especially if you're working with family or friends that are going to be giving you money. Sometimes you can, or are donating money to you, or lending you money. Because they're friends and family, you could have the flexibility to have kind of better terms than you would with like a bank or something like that. Along with the financial support, because these are friends and family, you might start to see that you have emotional support with that as well, and you're not going to have to be relying on external sources for money. Cons are it can put huge strains on relationships, especially if the project fails, or if what others were perceiving would happen doesn't. And so you want to be extra clear, extra careful that you're not making anybody uncomfortable with this decision. Depending on your social and family situation, you can be very limited in funding. Again, good for Kickstarter kind of stuff, like getting it out the door. And then again, risk of misunderstanding or disputes amongst friends and family is something you want to be careful about. So a group of college friends decided to start a website design and development agency. So they saw a need for that. They pull all their resources together, their finances, receive some money from their parents, and they are able to start to get the licensing, office space, and everything they need to move forward. So they developed, in order to do this, they developed a clear business plan. Again, so even if it's with your family, you want to make sure that you're absolutely clear. Calculated the initial amount of money that they would need for equipment, licenses, etc., so they can go to their family with exact numbers. Pitch the business idea to friends, family, discussing potential investments or loans if that's the case, especially if you're going to start giving people returns on their investments, and created formal agreements, even though they were between the families, for terms, repayments, and ownership if that is part of the process. It's just, this is more, you got to differentiate look at the difference between a gift and a money that someone's going to be investing. So an investment's usually going to have something returning back into them. Moving on, sponsorships. These are collaborations with different brand partnerships to be able to secure funding. And these are great for projects with strong brand fit with other influencers or companies or sponsors of some kind of an approach. So this can be anything from receiving financial sponsorship up to in like gear sponsorship. So if you want to reach out to Nikon or Canon or Sony and say, hey, I've got this idea, this is what we're trying to do, but we're trying to increase our recording capabilities. Can we get into a sponsoring agreement? We'll plug your company and work that way. It can also be local businesses can be sponsored. This episode brought to you by Billy Bob's House of Boba Tea. I don't know, something like that. And then Billy Bob gives you, a couple $100 a month to do that kind of advertising, sees that return on his investment, says, oh, that's good, $200. Let me spend that $200 every month. Now you've got some sponsorships kind of coming because you're supporting local businesses. Pros and cons, there's a lot of potential for substantial funding, especially if you start to incorporate large parts of the community. You can have access to brand resources and other audiences, especially if they're tying into what you're doing, particularly with like other influencers or kind of trendsetters inside of your niche market. And there's opportunity for creative collaborations that you can be working with, things that you never thought would work before. It's like, oh, I never thought I'd be working with this person in this capacity. That's kind of cool how the Venn diagrams are really, really small, but we found a way to make that really small area work for both of us. Cons are you want to have alignment with brand values when that's going to be required. So if your product isn't very good and you're like, hey, we're using these expensive cameras, but you're not using them well, they might yank them and say, hey, sorry, you're not making us look good. Things like that. You could be losing some creative control depending on what the negotiation is with those partnerships. And you might grow to be a little bit overly dependent on those sponsorships, especially if there's not other income avenues for your project. So here's an example. Developing YouTube channel focuses on reviewing video games, collaborates with a gaming accessory company. The company sponsors the channel with gaming peripherals for review, while the YouTube creator features their products for shares a percentage of the sponsorship's revenue. So in order to secure this, what they did is they had to build a substantial audience first and say, hey, we actually have an audience that's going to look at your product, since they want to see that there's credibility in that niche market. They identified potential sponsors and aligned their content and their brands together, reached out to the brand with a proposal outlining the opportunities and negotiated terms, and were able to execute and move forward. Next one is a subscription. We kind of talked about this when we were looking at business models, because this can be a funding source and a way to do our business model, but we're going to talk about it again. Charging users or audiences with reoccurring access to content. This is great for projects with a dedicated following and valuable premium content. So if you're creating something that is always subscription based, then you're going to be delivering that value to your audience. And I can think of there's several organizations that kind of have this kind of a model. There's several political organizations, especially for like film content and things like that. There's a lot of religious organizations that are like, hey, we're making this content. We want people to subscribe. It's like we're an alternative to like the mainstream Hulu, Netflix, and things like that. If you want content that's more of this flavor, support us, and you can have yearly access to the content, things like that. Pros and cons are, once you have subscriptions, things can be a little bit more predictable, especially if they're steady. So that predictable and recurring revenue is nice to be able to see, and you can make decisions better off of that. Usually, if there's subscriptions, you have a lot of buy-in, a lot of enthusiasm from your audience, so there's strong community engagement. And you have independence from external investors because you're just dealing with your target audience that you're going to be working with. Cons are you need to deliver, always deliver and be constant in your delivery and always innovating and giving your audience what they need, because if you don't, then they're just going to yank their subscriptions very easily. You need to build and maintain a loyal audience, which is not always easy. Building an audience could be kind of easy, but maintaining that audience, that's where it gets a little bit tricky. And you might need to start with some freemium services at the beginning so that people can actually see what they are getting into before they decide to actually give money. So now you're giving away content for free with the hope that soon they'll be able to kind of get on board. So an example would be an online magazine dedicated to photography, offers premium content, tutorials, exclusive interviews, etc. For those who pay a monthly fee. The subscription revenue supports the creation of high quality, in-depth content for photography enthusiasts. So they've got the general, just like forward-facing public photography that's probably getting out there, local photographers' images. Maybe they're connecting photographers with community members so that they can build their client base. But on the side of everything, it's like, hey, let's teach you also how to do better photography or editing for photography or those kinds of things. And so now it's a subscription base attached with that website, as an example. So steps to accomplish this funding: build a dedicated audience, right, with free quality content to kind of bring them in. Develop premium content later on so that they, as your subscriptions start coming in, you're delivering that content. Implement subscription platform. There's ones that you can use. You can integrate it through your website. Promote a subscription model through newsletters, social media, and continue to engage and promote and kind of recycle through those subscriptions to make sure that people are getting the best bang for their buck. I said this word a couple of times earlier, venture capitalists. These are actual firms that exist where people kind of belong to. It's like a club, if you will. People like to invest in, and the goal of this club or this organization is to start to find things that they can invest in and get a good return on their investment. So with that, they're looking at either having some equity in it. So sometimes that happens, sometimes that doesn't. But oftentimes these are going to be a little bit higher interest kind of opportunities because of just the nature of what a venture capital organization is. So if you have a clear path in profitability, you are going to be a lot more successful venture capitalists because there are some pressures with these groups and there's some challenges with competition. So pros and cons, you can get all your funding done this way, everything that you need to, as long as you have a compelling and profitable idea. Again, like others, you'll get expertise in industry connections, but maybe even more so with venture capitalists because oftentimes there's a lot more of them. And you can see potential scaling of your investments because when one group of venture capitalists see that something's profitable, others are going to want to kind of jump in so it can snowball really quickly if it does. It's just one of those things. Cons are you can have a pretty large loss of equity just because of the nature of it. Again, high pressure growth expectations. They want to see things. They want to see big returns and quickly. So that's what they're looking for. If you have a group of venture capitalists looking at 300 different projects, they're going to find the one that can give them back the most money the quickest. So hopefully that's yours. And then there's a lot of stringent due dates and reporting and due diligence that you have to do because they'll have like monthly or quarterly or some kind of reporting system to make sure that the venture capitalists are feeling secure about what you're trying to do. So a tech startup working on groundbreaking virtual reality experiences secures venture capital funding to accelerate development. The firm provides substantial capital for equity, but this allows them to do the startup and bring talent on and bring themselves to market. So how do they do this? Well, first of all, they refine their business model and they created product prototypes or some kind of thing to show what the product's going to be and growth strategies so that we can satisfy the what is it, how much am I going to get back, where's this going, all the things, the questions that a venture capitalist would have for this project. Identified firms or angel investor groups. We talk about angel investors, but these kind of firms are also, they're kind of lumped together, almost the same thing, but a little bit different. Interested in the industry, prepared compelling pitch decks highlighting project scalability and market potential. And engaged investor meetings. Sometimes you'll have to do this in person or through like Zoom calls or something like that. And prepared, pitched, or engaged in the meetings, did the due diligence, did the negotiations, everything you needed to do. That's going to take a little bit of time. Finally secured your capital and went along with it. So it can be challenging. It can be fun. It can be all the things you need it to be. All right, that was a lot. So we looked at all these different things, and now you might be asking the question, so what? What does this have to do with me? So for this project, I'm not asking you to go out and make money. I'm not asking you to get money. I'm not even asking you to spend money on your project for this class. We're just coming up with a plan. Now, if you choose to move forward with your plan, and I would encourage you to, if it's something that you feel like you can do and you're passionate about it, start to think about these things now and start moving towards those directions. I want to absolutely tell you, do not go into debt for this class. So, I mean, you can, but I am not asking you to do that. So for the project that you're working on, we are now on week 6, looking at our monetization strategy. Next week, week 7 and 8, we are going to be looking at everybody's projects. You will be coming up in front of the audience, in front of the class, and just pitching what you have on those first set of slides for the first half of class. But what you're going to need, or the slide that you're going to work on for this content, will look something like this, but with the branding of that other PowerPoint presentation. So here's the Fermata Films one, right? The one that I was giving an example about the actor reels that I was doing in Las Vegas. Monetization plan was to use 3 different forms. First was self-financing, product pre-sales, and bootstrapping. So I already had a lot of equipment that I was already using. Plus, I used some personal savings so that I can purchase some lights and some microphones. Product pre-sales, as I was finding clients to work with, they were paying me up front so that I could then secure locations and wardrobe and other things like that, and start to make the films. And then as we were collecting that money from potential clients and customers, we were then investing that money back in getting better lenses, getting better props and things like that to be working with. So I've identified a monetization plan. At the bottom here, these are your initial startup costs. This is to get yourself running, to get yourself started in making your project. This is not the same as your overall budget. The overall budget might be, $5,000, $50,000, $500,000, $5 million. But what do you need to start so that when you can get your ground running and start to attract more people coming in? So let's say you have a $50,000 budget, but really after about $7,000, you can actually start making progress towards it. That's what this initial startup is going to be. Time to develop startup funds. How long is that going to take you to get the ball running? Not to get to the absolute top, all $50,000, but this initial startup to start working with that. And then what's funding sources, not the same one as the monetization plans, but what funding sources are going to help you with the initial startup. So it could be the same as the monetization plans, and this one here, financing and product pre-sales, it is the same, but it might be different. We're just looking at the initial startup at this point so that we can start getting ourselves to the bigger startup. When would you start to launch your project after you get your startup costs? So in this example here, I need $7,500. It will take me 6 months to get those things. I'm going to start this in my senior year to try to get those funds, that's $7,500 funds, so that at graduation, I'm ready to start with my job. I might not be making a whole lot of money yet at this, but this new project will be started 1 month after graduation of my hypothetical timeline here. And then what is the timeline for income, profits, and funds from there? And that's what we're going to see after start of the first reel. So that might take you a couple of days, right? I'm going to do photography and a photography business. And as soon as I start making clients, boom, I'm starting to get money, and I'm going to start getting everything I need so that I can hit my budget that I'm going for. But if I'm making a documentary or a feature film, whoa, that time frame for income is going to be after we sell it. So that could be a year. It could be 2 years from now. So just kind of be realistic with your project and think to yourself, okay, how am I going to be able to sustain myself when this project is all done and over with? Or how am I going to get the initial funds? What is my initial startup cost to get the ground running? Is it the same as my budget? Is it less than my budget? How long is it going to take me? What are my sources? How long is it going to take me to do those launches? Here's a couple examples. So a museum VR experience, they're looking at angel investors, grants, and some subscriptions. Their initial startup costs are going to be $240,000. The time to develop those, they're going to give themselves 12 months to be able to secure the angel investors, grants, and subscriptions to get them up to $240,000. You are most importantly using the angel investors and grants. Subscriptions are going to help them sustain their business and make more content. They're looking to launch their project. I just kind of future-proofed this spring of 2030. And the time frame for profits are going to be 6 to 9 months. So they will take a year, and then about a year, another half a year, 3/4 of a year later, they're going to start to see income coming in. So it's going to take a little while to get that money to actually come in with this project, and that's not uncommon. So you want to have, those income sources and ways to kind of sustain things. A student that wants to do a feature film is looking at crowdfunding, business loans, and sponsorships to work with. Initial startup costs are going to be $12,000. They're going to give themselves 3 months to be able to do the crowdfunding, and then if whatever they don't get through crowdfunding, they'll get a business loan. They're going to do their project launch in February of 2029, and by the time they're going to start to see their income from their crowdfunding, it's going to be about a year later to start working on that. Actually, about 2 years later here, because it's February 29 to December 30. So that should give you what you need. It's not too difficult to come up with these plans, but again, it's difficult up here, but it's easy to put it on paper. So work with your teams, or if you're a team of one, make sure that you have everything that you need for that. Please let me know if you have any questions about this. Shoot me an email, set up some time during my office hours, talk to me before, after class, when we meet for class again. And I look forward to seeing what your plan is to make this happen, and see your presentation here in the next week or two. All right, thanks a lot, and be awesome. Bye.